All right, I clicked live. I don't see the clock running. All right, now the clock is running. Tick-tock, time to rock. Good evening and good morning and good afternoon to all the Christians and the Muslims and the Jews and the atheists and the agnostics and the Hindus and the Buddhists and, yes, even the Jehovah's Witnesses who are joining us right now. I'm David Wood, and with me is Anthony Rodgers. Let me do, at the beginning here, sound check. Anyone hear us? There's always a delay, so when I'm saying it, it takes about another 30 to 40 seconds before I actually see it. Looks like we're on over there. So I believe, Anthony, that we are good. I just sent out a message saying that we are live. We've been examining a topic recently. Anthony, why don't you tell us a little bit about the topic and why we're talking about it?
Right. Okay. So we're talking about the fact that the Islamic sources, the Quran, the Sunnah, the Sira literature, anything that Muslims would consider either completely authentic or mostly authentic, otherwise reliable sources of Islamic teaching, actually teach, contrary to what some, but not all Muslims believe, really teach that Allah has body parts. He has an anatomy that may appropriately be described using the same sorts of terms that are used for men, animals, other things. So it says that Allah has a face, He has ears, eyes, hands, feet, shin, side, so the importance of this is that Muslims often accuse Christians of believing in a man God, even though according to Christianity, Jesus was eternally God, not a man, and his human nature is never confused with his divine nature. He became incarnate, but he never ceased to be fully divine, and again, his divine nature never changed or transmutated into a human nature. Those two natures forever remain distinct, although united in his one person. And so it's interesting that the people who actually criticize Christians for a belief we don't hold actually hold that particular position. That's also problematic for Muslims because the God who made the world can't be a being conditioned by space and time. He has to exist prior to and independently of space and time. Otherwise, he can't be the creator of them. He requires them in which to exist. So it creates huge problems for Muslims, especially given their attempted polemic against Christianity.
Mm-hmm. All right, let me go through a couple comments here in the live chat. By the way, tonight we're going to be focusing on comments, not just from the live chat. I'll bring up some from the live chat, but we pulled up some of the comments in the comment section from the previous two installments of this series because we do want to interact with those and we do want to examine responses from people. But let me just bring a couple things up real quick right here from the comments from the live chat. Muhammad loves children, says. Sorry. Aisha reported Allah's apostle Muhammad married me when I was 6 years old and I was admitted to his house when I was 9 years old. It's from Sahih Muslim. That's not our topic for the evening, but it is a good place to point out that if you missed the recent video I posted on how to deal with prison radicalization, I posted part one. Yes, that was just part one. Part one was using that text right there and the related ones on Muhammad having sex with a 9-year-old girl. That would change the relationship between Islam and prison inmates if the inmate population ever really found out about that. But if you guys want to discuss things like that in a live chat, we can. We can always pull up the video and respond to questions and so on. One more over here. JMD Apologetics. Yo, David sent you an email. Yes, just wanted to point out that I got it. Haven't responded. We we've been busy all week. My son, we found out early in the week, required an eye surgery. And so we went and did that today. So we spent the day at the hospital, had to leave here at 5 o'clock a.m., get him to the hospital early because he has a ventilator and so on. They want to see him first. They don't want him sitting in a waiting room all day. So yeah, been busy, but yeah, I saw your email and I'll get to it. All right. So Anthony, in the past 2 installments, you've gone through some sources on Muhammad and his companions and the Quran, commenting on Allah's physical body parts. So we've gone through some of the sources. Next week, we want to look at what Muslim scholars say about this issue. But right now, we didn't want to get too far behind on comments because people are raising objections, and some of them are silly, as we'll see, and some of them are meant to be silly, right? People find it very amusing talking about Allah's shin and his feet and stuff like that. So people find those things amusing. We're going to look at some comments, but there are people, Muslims and non-Muslims, who are raising objections or trying to give alternative interpretations of the text we're bringing up. So we wanted to address some of those comments now. Now, I'll go ahead and start off with a couple of, this one's slightly off topic, but it's a good way to start, right? We don't want to be just critical all the time. So, thank you, Mr. David Wood. I am saved by your videos. I live near many Muslims. They always tried to convert me by saying Christians are worshiping their prophet, Isa Nabi, and they are worshiping the one true God. All people of Europe are converting to Islam, and churches are being converted to mosques. By a few more years, Europe will become a Muslim majority country. I was totally confused. So he right here, he's saying what Muslims are pointing out to him. I was totally confused, but your videos helped me to know the truth. And I also did a study about Islam and Christianity. Now I am sure that Christianity is the only way to heaven. The loving God of the Bible, Jehovah, and Allah are not the same God. Allah is a pagan moon god. Jesus is the only Savior. Let our Lord Jesus Christ bless this channel to help more people to know the truth and come to Christ. So I wanted to share. That was the top comment on the last video by the number of likes. Now, before someone jumps out there and says, he said he's saved by your videos. That's not how we're saved. I don't think that's what he's talking about. He's talking about Muslims were coming to him trying to convert him. And so he was looking for answers and found some answers on YouTube. So saved in that sense, not in the, I think, salvation sense. So that was a quick, good comment there. And now it's actually a short one for Anthony. How does Anthony know so much about all this stuff? That's a good question. Like, Anthony, I mean, you're sitting there in seminary, supposed to be studying Bart and stuff like that, and here you are studying Allah's body parts and got this 70 pages worth of text. What are you doing?
Yeah, well, actually, most of the study in the Islamic sources took place prior to seminary. I still continue to read through them. I'm currently working through Ahmed bin Hanbal's Musnad, which is extremely large, and they're still actually translating it into English. But I spent many years, decades in fact, reading the Islamic sources with an interest to reach Muslims with the gospel. So I think I've explained on previous broadcasts how I came to realize that this is what the Islamic sources teach. Initially, I read the Quran thinking that it, at least with respect to something like the nature and attributes of God, that God is essentially spiritual and has the attributes of omniscience, omnipotence, omnibenevolence, and so forth. I assumed that would be the case, and where Muhammad would pervert things would be particularly with respect to the Lord Jesus Christ, to the gospel, and things of that nature. But as I read the Islamic sources, it became increasingly obvious that Muhammad meant these things quite literally. And so I at one point decided I'm going to read through the Islamic sources with no other intent. At this point, I had already read through them many times, with no other intent than to gather up all of the things that the Quran and the Hadith say. So I'm still working on that project, but I've made it a good distance through the Islamic sources, just with an eye toward collecting and organizing all of that material. So that gives some insight into how I came to learn about Islam, and in particular about this topic. But
And notice what Anthony did. He started noticing some issues in the Muslim sources and decided to actually go through them with an open mind to see what Islam really teaches on these issues. And we could only wish and hope and pray that the Muslim viewers here would do the same, would actually say, okay, let me honestly, openly examine what the Muslim sources say on these issues. I would love it. I would love it if Muslims did that. I think it would lead to a lot of people leaving Islam and realizing that their scholars and their apologists are lying to them. All right, one quick question here from the Super Chat. Ham Sunshine says, did Muhammad suck on the finger of children? Not thinking of anything right now in my mind as far as fingers, but tongues and lips, yes. Yes, he did. And that, but by the way, that doesn't have to be something perverted. It was just I don't know if it was some weird custom back in Arabia where you'd suck on people's tongue, but I've actually seen Muslims try to defend this by talking about the miraculous properties of Muhammad's saliva and so on. And you even have no tongue or lips that the Prophet has sucked on will taste the hellfire. You have stuff like that. So, Muhammad's miraculous tongue-sucking abilities.
You have some Muslims saying that Muhammad did that as a way of helping children who were without water.
It's all about the children, right? Wait a minute, Anthony. I mean, couldn't Muhammad shoot water out of his fingers and stuff like that? Didn't he have miraculous abilities?
Not according to the Quran, but according to later Muslim tradition, he did all sorts of weird things. But one other thing, though, is I think we can infer that Muhammad probably would have sucked the fingers of children because Muhammad taught what when it came to eating.
Yeah. Matter of fact, that there would be indisputable. If a kid didn't want to lick his own fingers, then Muhammad would have done it or had someone else do it because
can't miss the blessing.
Yeah, and if you don't know what we're talking about, there, go through, look through the episodes of Islamicize Me, where we talk. I think it's called Finger Licking Good.
Well, yeah, you also did it's probably, what is it? One of those.
The Fun Islamic Facts.
Yeah, Islamic Facts.
Yeah.
Fun facts.
Yeah. Type in sucking Muhammad's fingers or something like that, because yes, if you were eating, you weren't supposed to use a napkin because Allah has hidden a blessing in your food. And since he's hidden a blessing in there, you don't want to wipe it and then it goes on the napkin and then Satan gets your blessing. So you want someone has a human being in good spiritual standing should be getting that blessing. So either you should be licking it or one of your friends should be licking it off your finger. So yeah, if a kid didn't want to lick his own fingers, Muhammad was sure to jump in there and get that blessing. You got to get all that blessing. All right, let's go ahead to... actually, this was one more, but I did want to address it. Acts 17 Apologetics. Can you make a short video, 10 or 15 minutes, on the Apostle Paul, who is over Muhammad and the Muslim God? So if the Apostle Paul can change, and the Muslim God said no one can change, talking about his revelations, and Paul did it, that shows Muslims that God has no power over the Apostle and automatically that Islam is false. And then he sets up a little hierarchy here. Jesus over the Apostle Paul, and then way down below that you have the Muslim God, that's Allah, and then Muhammad. So this was a reference to what we were discussing last time when a Muslim was arguing that Paul corrupted Christianity, and we're pointing out that according to Islam, according to the Quran, no one can change Allah's word. So if Paul did it, he did something that Allah said he couldn't do, which would make him more powerful than Allah. So you'd end up with Muhammad, who's a slave of Allah, and Allah isn't as powerful as the Apostle Paul, and the Apostle Paul considers himself a mere bondservant of the Lord Jesus Christ. So via the transitive property here, whom should we be listening to? One of these guys on bottom? No, we should be listening to Jesus up top there. But I have made a video discussing that. So if you go to my series, Paul versus Muhammad, I'm not sure which video it was, but the whole series is important. They're mostly short videos. Some of them are like 2 minutes long. But it's an entire series comparing Paul and Muhammad. You can go to my channel, get that very important series. Possibly the most important series I've made so far with I don't know. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good series. You want to check that out. And basically, the entire point of the series is that Paul, the Apostle Paul, is more reliable and trustworthy than Muhammad was in every possible way I could think of comparing the two. So I came up with like 25 different ways we could compare Paul and Muhammad, and Paul won in every possible way. So if Paul wins in every possible way over Muhammad, how can Muslims expect us to just blame the Apostle Paul when Muhammad's revelations don't line up with Jesus' revelations? All right, so I hope that helps. You'll want to check out that series. All right, Anthony, just wanted to get through a few of these because a lot of people were amused at us talking about the shin and the 2 feet and so on. Answer this question. If Allah will reveal his shin, doesn't that make Allah a shinner?
Yes, it does. I don't know what else to say.
There's not a lot to say.
Yeah, and maybe it's especially shiny.
We've been refuted here.
Maybe it's especially shinny.
This one is LOL. How can you recognize someone based on how their shin looks?
Well, that might seem absurd to us, but apparently it wasn't absurd to Muhammad. Muhammad said that all Muslims not only will, but must. In fact, they have to do so based on a prior mental picture that they already have. So apparently the Islamic sources are sufficiently detailed. In fact, Muhammad claims that they are in various places in the Quran, sufficiently detailed so that Muslims on that day won't be caught short. But of course, I mean, our criticism would be that, that's not feasible unless there is some clear mental, image they have based on a clear description.
So this should actually be a question for Muslims, right? We don't have to take it seriously that there's some way to recognize the Almighty by the way his leg looks, like the shape of his leg or something like that. And we don't have to believe that there is an actual legitimate description in the Muslim sources, although we've got some descriptions of Allah's various body parts, but we don't have to be taking this seriously. So this is a question for Muslims. Muslims, your prophet says that you'll recognize Allah by his shin. So you have to, according to your prophet, if Islam is true, if Muhammad was a true prophet, you have to understand what Allah's shin looks like. So you tell us what his shin looks like, or you tell us what this passage means. But if you can't, then your prophet's status as a prophet is under investigation. All right, couple more of the goofy one, then we'll actually get into some objections here. These guys are great. I don't know, but when I imagine Muhammad's Allah, one shin, 2 feet, 2 right hands, an elbow, sitting on the throne, I imagine him like Poseidon or Neptune with a whale tail, 2 feet and 1 shin. They've got a point. If you had 1 shin with 2 feet, it would look like a whale tail. With Hindu hands only on the right side of his body, or just like a sea lion. Now, Anthony, just to be clear, we're not saying that Allah only has 1 shin, right?
Right. The Muslim view, those that take the Quran not only literally but strictly as Allah's word, part of their argument against the people that later came and wanted to interpret things figuratively because they thought that philosophical reflection required positing an immaterial, non-tangible, non-corporeal being. The people that wanted to take these things literally would say things like, no, we say just what Allah says and nothing more, and don't try and reinterpret it, explain it away, and so forth. And so what they would say is, if Allah has affirmed for himself a face, then we affirm for him a face. If he affirms a hand, we affirm a hand. And so if he doesn't affirm something, like if he doesn't add knuckles, then we don't say he has knuckles. Now, I would think in some cases there's I mean, they are being scrupulous. I'm not going to fault them for that per se, but I do think it's natural to assume that when certain things are mentioned, it sort of assumes or presupposes some other things that aren't mentioned. But to be fair to their own position, at least the Muslims, not necessarily Muhammad, but the Muslims who are accepting this, they would say Allah affirmed for himself a shin. We don't read anywhere that he affirmed that he has 2 shins. So they would reason from the fact that he has 2 feet that he must therefore have 2 shins. And so, it's not that he doesn't have them, it's that he hasn't told us about the other one. So if there is another one.
Yeah, so just to be clear. Yeah, just to be clear. It's Muslim. We're getting this from Muslims, and the interpretations of Muslim scholars who are examining Muslim texts, and their position is that you can't know anything about Allah that he hasn't revealed to you. And so if he's revealed that he has a shin, it's possible that he has two shins. It's possible that he has two full legs. All these things are possible, but you don't say that because he hasn't revealed it. So only say what Allah has told you, and he's told you that he has a shin. He's stated that Allah has a shin. So you can say that Allah has a shin because Allah has told you. So Allah has, at the very least, a shin. Might have two, but all you know is that you have one. So what you could say is, can we have a picture of Allah that is that would go through what he has declared about himself without going beyond it, right? And I believe someone has requested that. Someone. Here we have another one. So Allah has two right hands and one leg with 2 feet on it. I think we just answered that. Yeah, we're going with what has been revealed and not going beyond it. And here, I'm pretty sure if Anthony and I were interpreting these texts, we'd say, okay, obviously, if you have feet and you have a shin, you've got 2 shins. Go ahead and say it. But the Muslim scholars don't want to go beyond that. Oh yeah, here we have it. Hey David, can you make a rough drawing of Allah with a leg and 2 right hands, etc.? We might have to, but again, it would have to be. This is the bare minimum that Allah has, and so a shin with 2 feet sticking out the bottom of it, 2 right hands, and this is the minimum. All right, I think we have one more on this shin, and then we're gonna get into. Oh no, 2 more. Not 2 more on the shin, but 2 more sort of before we get into the objections. 1 shin with 2 feet. Sounds like the Little Mermaid to me. It's what's interesting, Anthony, is how people are trying to visualize this, right? And there's a reason they're trying to visualize it is you have so many descriptions of Allah's physical body parts that you can't help it. You can't help it, but you can't help but try and put together an image of this. So what do you think about that?
Well, I think it creates a conundrum too, because Muhammad said that Muslims are they have to have a mental picture. They have to know ahead of time what Allah actually looks like, so that they can say, this is our Lord, as opposed to others on the Day of Judgment. But it creates a problem, because you have to then find something in the Islamic sources that give you sufficient enough detail to distinguish his shin from other shins. But it would also mean then that this description is available to non-Muslims. So if the non-Muslims are careful and go through the Islamic sources, they might have a loophole on the Day of Judgment. They might be able to say, wait a minute, I know what the shin looks like.
Yeah. And then they're good to go.
Yeah.
All right, one more, and you can comment on this, Anthony. The awkward moment when there are more physical descriptions of Allah than Isa in the Quran.
Well, yeah, I don't know if I have a comment on that. That's awkward. That's true as well.
Yeah, especially if your entire apologetics approach is meant to be ridiculing Christians for believing that Jesus is God. And you've got all these physical descriptions, not just in the Quran. We're talking. We're usually talking about stuff in the various Muslim sources, but yeah, tons of physical descriptions of Allah.
It'd be interesting to do a study and see if anyone in the Quran is described more than Allah.
Mm-hmm. That sounds like a good video project for you.
Yeah, and then the question would be, if these aren't literal in the case of Allah, maybe they're not literal in the case of all these other people.
Yeah, for real. Yeah. Yeah. All right, we're about to get into subjection. Did want to, since this is kind of a Q&A, did want to look at a couple things over from the chat over here. I am a Christian Indian. Your testimony with Nabil was super relevant to my family. From Chris. Glad we could help, and yeah, I think we all miss Nabil. 2 more from the super chat over here. David, I tried to clarify what I meant about the shin and the Jamiat Tirmidhi 3169 in a comment on your video about stopping prison radicalization. Did you happen to see? Yes, I did. I wasn't. Maybe I need to read it more carefully. I still didn't get the point about the leg of the beast. But go ahead and leave another comment here, and tell me if you're really convinced that this is talking about Allah's leg here, because I don't know if you're kind of like trying to make fun of the point, or if you're actually saying that this is talking about Allah. So go ahead. Not here in the chat, because you can't post very long comments. But once we're done in the comments section, post it, and I will definitely check that out before we post the next one. Anth 1984 says, I think we live in some kind of matrix computer simulation. Another thing, according to the Bible, when we die, we go to sleep until Jesus resurrects us. What's your thoughts on these questions? So, one, Anthony, do you think we're in some sort of matrix or computer simulation?
No.
Yeah, me neither. So those are our thoughts. But yeah, you do, and I'm guessing this is someone who's I don't know if people have been making videos. This is actually an issue in philosophy where our technology is advancing so rapidly that we're going to get to the point where we could like simulate reality inside a computer system. So, and if you had advanced enough technology, you could make a matrix-like system. And so how would you know if you're in one? Philosophers usually aren't serious in claiming that we are inside one. They're looking for they're looking for answers to questions about how you would know if you were in something like that. And that goes way, way back. That goes way, way back. It kind of goes back to Plato when he's talking about the allegory of the cave, when people are stuck in this cave and they're seeing images and they think that that's the entire world. When someone finally escapes and he gets out and he sees, no, there's actually this other much more real world out here. It really goes to Descartes. What would happen if there were an omnipotent deceiver constantly deceiving me about things? He could convince me that this world is real when it's not. He could be convincing me of all kinds of things. And here again, like modern philosophers, Descartes was using this to figure out how you could know that something like that was not true. So he eventually got to something that even an omnipotent deceiver couldn't be deceiving him about. And what the deceiver could not be deceiving him about was his own existence, right? So that's the basis of I think, therefore I am. If I'm thinking, then even if some super powerful being was deceiving me every moment of my life, he couldn't be deceiving me about that. Because even in me thinking, me trying to think, well, maybe he's deceiving me, it's clear that I exist. So an omnipotent deceiver could not deceive me about my own existence. I at least have to exist. And then he goes on from there. What are other things that I could not be deceived about? And then the second part was, another thing, according to the Bible, when we die, we go to sleep until Jesus resurrects us. What's your thoughts on these questions? Thanks. So is that your position?
He said that according to the Bible, when we die,
according to the Bible, when we die, we go to sleep until Jesus resurrects us. What's your thoughts on this?
No, I would say, well, the term sleep is used, but the idea is that we're resting from our labors and we're at home or at peace with the Lord. But you'll notice, for example, that the term sleep is never used to describe the state of the unbelievers, right? It never says that they're sleeping. And that's precisely because this is only something that is true for the righteous. And so it's speaking of something that's blessed about death for the believer. And that is, again, that we're resting from our labors and we're alive in Christ. Paul makes it clear in Philippians 1 that to die is to depart and to be with Christ. He also says in 1 Corinthians 5 that to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. Jesus told the thief on the cross, today you'll be with me in paradise. So there are numerous passages that speak of the righteous being conscious and with Christ at death. You might also think of the souls beneath the altar in the book of Revelation who are crying out, how long, O Lord, until you execute vengeance on those who slayed us. So over and over again, Scripture speaks of the conscious, continued existence of people after death.
So there are, and he's obviously thinking of, some of the kinds of passages you mentioned where, we sleep. But your point, so just to be clear, your point is, yes, maybe if we were just looking at those texts, then you might think that you go into some sleep-like state until the resurrection. And there are Christians who believe that, but that when you examine other things from the Bible, that takes on a different meaning, right?
Yeah, well, and it's also the case, though, in some of the passages that talk about sleep, that it's clear the people, it's describing the person from the perspective of the body, and from the fact that their soul is at rest with Christ. But yeah, in some of the passages, it's clear, for example, in 1 Thessalonians 4, Paul is addressing the question, What about those who died? Are they going to miss out on the blessedness that results from Christ's second coming? And Paul says no. When Jesus returns from heaven, he's going to raise them up, and then he's going to catch us up to be with them. But what he says furthermore is that Jesus is going to bring with him those who are asleep, right? So they're with him, and he's bringing them with him, and he's going to raise their bodies and reunite them with their souls. Mm-hmm. So even in some of those passages, it's clear that they're not unconscious, and so sleep is not to be pressed to mean that they're somehow unaware.
All right, now all of this is kind of off topic, but since we're basically doing kind of a Q&A here, we have more comments to go through that are on the topic at hand. But with that in mind, Anthony, and I say that because that's how this comment begins. This one isn't too tricky, but seems like some people are interested in this topic. With that in mind, how can the dead in Christ rise first if they are already with the Lord? So how can the dead, you said that the dead in Christ are already with the Lord.
Yeah, spiritually, or their souls are with him.
So their bodies are still here. Right.
Their bodies are interred in the earth, and he's bringing the souls with him precisely because he's going to raise their bodies and so that rejoin them together.
And that's what the resurrection is, right? That's what we mean by resurrection.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, it's an important topic to mention just because Muslims so rarely have a concept of what the resurrection is. That resurrection is the body being reunited with the soul and returning to life. And that's true even in Islam. And I say this because Muslim apologists like Ahmed Deedat and Zakir Naik, I don't know if they just don't know what Islam teaches and they don't know what Christianity teaches, and based on their ignorance, they're attacking Christianity, or maybe they do know that and they're using other people's ignorance against them in order to attack Christianity. But I've actually seen them. Use this objection, something like this. Well, Christians believe that Jesus returned to life, that he's resurrected, and yet he was able to eat a fish. So obviously he wasn't resurrected. He still has a body. And not realizing that is the resurrection. They wouldn't have said resurrection if the body had not returned to life, right? They would have said something else, right? They would have said that he is back as a spirit. They wouldn't have said resurrection. That about right, Anthony?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay,
yeah.
So guys, learn what and here's the thing: if Muslims learn what resurrection means in both Christianity and Islam, then they're going to start realizing that even their apologists are tricking and deceiving them, which is going to be a theme as we go through Muslim sources and what Muslim scholars say about them. All right, let's go ahead and look at a few more here. We'll actually get into some questions here. And some of these, we're only going through them because it's clear that some people haven't watched or didn't watch carefully what we've said in the past installments here, because we've gone through certain objections over and over again, and then people bring up the same objections. So it's clear that not everyone is paying attention. So on the one hand, you kind of don't want to keep repeating yourself, but on the other hand, if people are still missing the point and it's something basic and important, we might address it. So here's one. As a religious boy, I can say the same thing about our religion. So Anthony, we're sitting here talking about Allah's body parts and the physical descriptions of Allah, but as a religious boy, he doesn't say which religion, so he could be talking about Hinduism or Christianity or whatever, I don't know. But he says, as a religious boy, I can say the same thing about our religion. So this is a challenge of consistency here. Anthony, can you say the same thing about our religion on this issue?
No. I mean, I'm suspicious of the commenter's sincerity here. It sounds more like something a Muslim would say, even if a Christian believes.
Wait. You're saying there are circumstances where a Muslim would come into the comments section posing as a Christian to raise an objection?
Oh, they do it all the time. Just the other day, there was a guy who said that because of your videos, he has become a Muslim that very day. That very day he became a Muslim. So I went to his site and I looked at videos he's liked from years ago, and I go to those videos and I looked for his name, and he's on there promoting Islam and everything else.
I've seen that. I've seen that more times than I could count in a lifetime. So we're in agreement that happens quite a bit.
So I just don't think that a Christian's going to put it like that without some more behind that. But anyways, you can't say the same thing about our religion and be accurate, right? The Bible says God is spirit, John 4:24. Throughout Scripture, God is described as omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent. These aren't attributes or qualities that are consistent with a corporeal being that has a literal face, eyes, hands, and so forth. When the Bible uses those terms, it's either in poetic literature or otherwise it's an obvious trope or figure of speech. For example, Psalm 91 says that God hides us under his wings. That doesn't literally mean God has wings. It's no different than Jesus in Matthew 23 saying, how often I wanted to gather you together like a hen, gathers her chicks. Jesus isn't saying he's a hen. God isn't saying he has wings. And we've explained this, but I would be inclined to read the Quran in a similar way, thinking all languages have figures of speech, and that's how the Quran uses terms like this as well. But as I said, as you start looking at these passages in the Quran and Muhammad's explanations in the Hadith, you can't do that and account for everything. You can't say that Allah, when it says he has hands, this is only figurative when Allah lays claim to only creating certain things with his hands, right? That has to mean something specific. When Muhammad comes along and says that Adam was only one of 4 other things created directly with Allah's hands, when he says that Allah's hand stroked Adam's back, when he says that Allah put his hand on his back between his 2 shoulder blades and he felt its coldness in his chest, that he's going to shake hands with Omar on the day of resurrection. All of these things preclude interpreting that simply as a figure of speech.
Anthony, the most important thing you said there was right at the beginning, because you're giving content for the rest of it, but lots of times the most important thing is the principle behind what you're saying. And Ghazi here says, as a religious boy, I can say the same thing about our religion. And you pointed out, yeah, but you can't say it accurately. And that is important enough that it requires double emphasis, because you should always be thinking about that as a response. When someone says to you, but I could say, yeah, you can say anything, right? I could say the same thing about our religion. Yeah, you could say anything about our religion, right? You can say, as far as uttering words, you can say anything you want. Of course. Can you say it accurately? That's the question. And as Anthony pointed out, yes, you can say, you are capable of uttering the words or typing them into the comment section of YouTube. I can say the same thing about our religion. Yes, you can say anything you want about our religion. Can you say it accurately? And as Anthony showed, no, you can't. So better luck next time, Ghazi, whoever you are. All right. And this one is related. And right after this one, we actually get into some more substantial objections that we'll want to go through a bit more carefully. But this one's from Alex, and he says, should Christians have a problem with Muslim scholars interpreting Allah as having literal hands, fingers, leg, head, body temperature, and texture, etc.? I like how I tossed in the body temperature, right? Because it's cool. So that's a video right there. Allah's body temperature.
Yeah. And just think about it. Often when people talk about being touched by God, that they're obviously speaking figuratively, but also they're saying there was some effect, right, upon them. And usually you think of that as more of a warmth than what you have in the Quran, where Allah touches Muhammad and he feels its coldness. He felt the icy touch of his deity. To me, that just doesn't,
I felt his cold, clammy hand on my back as he pressed that cold, clammy hand on me.
The icy touch of his deity.
Oh yeah, that is I'm gonna have to do. You know what? I might, because there's still just a few weeks left in 2018, but maybe that's a good 2019 project. Man God Monday, and do it every single Monday of the entire year. So you have a collection of 52 short videos going through one Muslim source each time, discussing Allah's body parts. By the end of the year, you got a collection of 52 videos, ladies and gentlemen, so that when a Muslim says, that's not true, you say, well, look, here are 52 videos on the topic. So, yeah. All right, guys, let me know if you want us to do Man God Monday, where we put the actual text on the screen, have the source up there, have arrows pointing to the relevant parts of the passage, show why it has to be interpreted literally, not figuratively, show why Muslim scholars make these kinds of claims, and so on. And normally I wouldn't want to do that with something like, something as weird as this, but we're in a situation where Muslims just don't know, and you just can't bring it. I mean, you bring it up to a Muslim, even a Muslim apologist, and they don't know, because they don't know what's in their sources. So looks like we just sorry, I just read a comment. Looks like we just have to go through this one step at a time. All right, Anthony, here's a quick question before we get into some substantive questions here, namely questions by a Muslim who's raising objections. But before that, there's a super chat. Can you speculate on Muhammad's favorite dinosaur?
Well, I would guess one with an especially large shin. It would remind him of his deity.
That Brachiosaurus has a really big shin. And in fact, I mean, you wonder, maybe Muhammad found a Brachiosaurus bone out there in the desert, and he's like, hey, maybe this was early man, and so maybe Adam was much bigger than us, and Adam's created in the image of God, so God is like this, and so on, and God has this big shin like this, and that's how we'll recognize him. So, point is, we don't know how he came to some of these conclusions, but maybe something like that. All right, Anthony. Now we've got a big one for you. Right here. I'm going to read these out. Anthony can't see these because he's on with me by Skype. He might be able to, if he's on his computer, see them in a second, but I'll go and read them out. We have 4 questions here. Starts out by, this is a lie, false. Now, what's a lie so far? One, that we're saying that according to the Muslim sources, Allah has body parts. Again, there are even plenty of Muslim scholars who agree with us on these issues. Or that the only significant interpretation of these passages is that these have to be interpreted literally, not figuratively. There are Muslims who will say the exact same thing. We're going to go through that in our next installment. But let's go through these, Anthony. It says, 1, nowhere in the Quran does it say that Allah has hair, forehead, cheeks, eyes, lips, neck, chest, stomach, back, arms, legs, etc. This is a complete, utter lie. So how do you respond to that? You've been exposed for a complete, utter lie, Anthony. Do you repent?
Well, now here's, so it's not even clear to me exactly what the person's trying to assert here. Is he saying that that the entire list is not found in the Quran? Because later in number 3, as I'm looking at it there, he admits that it says he has face and hands, right? So he can't be saying that.
Yeah, but he went through other things that it doesn't say. Now,
right.
To be clear, we're not saying that all of the things we're bringing up come from the Quran. So I don't know if this is a Quran only Muslim,
right?
So we're appealing to other things, like things that your prophet said, and according to the Quran, you're supposed to believe your prophet, and so we're saying that according to the Quran and your prophet, Muslims, we know a lot of things about Allah's various body parts. We know about a couple of them from the Quran. So yeah, we're going to look at the other 3 questions. But anything else you wanted to add on that one?
Well, yeah, just putting 1 and 3 together, we know not only that Allah has a face and hand, and therefore at least those 2 according to the Quran. We also know that he has eyes according to the Quran. In Surah, I think it's 1137, he tells Noah to make the ark under our eyes. and the expression in these passages talking about his eyes are just like the ones that talk about his hands, where he doesn't just simply say our eyes, but our two eyes. So he's being very emphatic there, and the same line of reasoning applied to Surah 3875 would apply here as well. So there's at least 4 passages in the Quran that mention his eyes. The Quran also mentions Allah's side. Surah 3956 refers to Allah's side. And what's interesting, in fact, since we were talking about this earlier, this is going to throw everybody for a loop that's been trying to make a picture of Allah. Okay, this is a hadith. I know I'm going beyond the Quran here, but remember, the Quran in Surah 3956 mentions his side. Not in all translations, because some of them are trying to dupe you, but a literal translation refers to Allah's side. But here's what Muhammad said in Sahih Muslim. Okay, it was narrated on the authority of Abdullah bin Umar that the Messenger of Allah, may peace be upon him, said, "Behold, the dispensers of justice will be seated on the pulpits of light beside Allah, on the right side of the merciful, exalted and glorious." Both sides of the being of Allah is the right side. Both of them are equally meritorious to be on. So according to Muhammad in the hadith, Allah has 2 sides, and both of them are right. Now, I don't know how you're going to put that picture together, but kudos to you if you could pull it off. I can't even mentally visualize it here.
Yeah, but, so people were able to visualize one shin with 2 feet. They were able to visualize things like that, but I don't know how they're going to picture,
So again, I mean, the Quran says he has face, eyes, hands, shin, side, and you could even infer other attributes from other things that the Quran mentions. And in fact, I wouldn't be the only one to do this. Muslims do this. The Quran mentions the kursi, the place for the feet, right? You have the throne, or you have the throne and the footstool, and the footstool, it says, is literally defined in Arabic as the place for the feet. And so if Allah has a place for his feet, then he has 2 feet. Now, that's not my reasoning, but that is the way some Muslims have interpreted that, who recognize that the Quran does teach that Allah has an anatomy. So those points are simply wrong that the person made.
And it's very, very important to keep in mind here. When you're saying, this is a complete, utter lie. Well, where did Muslim scholars get it from? Right? Because Muslim scholars say exactly what we're saying here. They're not laughing while they say it, but they are saying it. And so if you want to say it's a lie, then say it's a lie developed by Muslims, Muslim scholars, and the people who put the hadith collections together, and put the words on your prophet's mouth, say that your great hadith collectors put together a bunch of absolute lies about what your God is like. And go ahead and say that. And the conclusion to draw from that is, if they were a bunch of liars, then we can't know anything about your prophet, which means we can't know whether we should take him seriously as a prophet. And Islam is built on a foundation of lies. So if you want us to believe that, go ahead. In the meantime, we're going to respond to Muslims who actually take these sources seriously. All right. So number 2 here, question number 2. Some use 6842 to show that Allah has legs, but the verse is not talking about Allah's shin. For example, it doesn't say their Lord's shin or Allah's shin. It's talking about the people's shin. That is, their shin will be uncovered. This is an idiom. Have a look at Muhammad Asad and Yusuf Ali's footnote on 6842. And Anthony, I happen to know that you love it. You love it when Muslims go to Muhammad Asad. But we can, if you want to address that now, we can. If you want to save that to where we're talking about what Muslim scholars say about these things, you can. But what's the problem with saying that this isn't talking about Allah's shin?
Okay, yeah. So a couple of things here. First, note that he appeals to Muhammad Asad. Interesting thing about Muhammad Asad. First of all, he's a relatively contemporary Muslim commentator or exegete. He certainly doesn't trump older Quranic interpreters like Ibn Kathir, right? Ibn Kathir wrote a classical commentary on the Quran that is widely recognized by Muslims. And when you look at somebody like Ibn Kathir, when he attempts to interpret passages like this, what he does is what should sound the most sensible method to anyone. He asks, what did Muhammad say this verse meant, right? What did the person who first uttered these things, telling us they came from Allah, what did he say these things meant? Because if he has spoken on that, then his interpretation would obviously trump that of anybody else, right? And what he does is he actually points to the hadith that we mentioned along with this passage in Surah 68:42. He mentions the hadith where Allah is going to unveil his shin. The day in Surah 68:42 is obviously the day of resurrection. The hadiths that we are talking about are about the day of resurrection. And the particular thing that's going to reveal something major on that day is the shin. And in the hadith, it's very clearly Allah's shin. So if you look at Ibn Kathir's commentary, he cites the hadith of Al-Qudri or Sayyid Al-Qudri, and says that it's referring to Allah's shin, and that's according to Muhammad, right? It's an authoritative prophetic hadith, according to it's in Sahih Muslim, Sahih Bukhari, so.
And so when we're being accused by a Muslim here of lying and deceiving because we claim that the Quran refers to Allah's shin, so did Muhammad. Muhammad said that Allah is going to reveal his shin. That's in Islam's most trusted source on the teachings of Muhammad. That's Sahih al-Bukhari. And so here again, by the way, it just amazes me when we can quote stuff from Islam's most trusted sources. Say, here's what your prophet said. And a Muslim will say, you're a liar because, I throw that stuff out. Yeah. You're talking about 85 to 90% of Muslims who are Sunni Muslims and would take that as their most reliable source. So you're talking 85 to 90% of Muslims in the world would take that from Sahih al-Bukhari as good as gold. You have Ibn Kathir, considered by Sunni Muslims to be the greatest commentator on the Quran who's ever walked the planet. And we simply say what Muslims have said, what Muhammad said, according to your so-called authentic traditions, and what the greatest of Islamic scholars have said down through the centuries, and you call us a liar for doing it. And that's Islam, right? And so what do we really have here? You've got some guy who's never studied Islam, has no clue what he's talking about, reads a couple of contemporary Muslims who avoid 14 centuries of Islamic scholarship, and if we don't go along with them for the ride, then we're just liars. And welcome to 21st century Islam, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, and that actually causes me to want to say one thing. Any Muslim who would respond to us can't give any harsher criticism than he would give against those Muslims who hold this position. Of course, he could attack the reasons why we're doing it and stuff like that, but he can't say things like you're stupid unless he's willing to say that about all these other Muslim scholars. And what's interesting is, when you're if you're going to be consistent, you have to realize the ripple effect of this. For example, one of the Muslims who held this position was Ahmed bin Hanbal. Another Muslim who held this position was Ibn Khuzaimah. Both of these men are considered scholars of hadith. They are major collectors of hadith, major authorities in the dissemination and interpretation of hadith. And so if you're going to refer to people who have interpreted things this way as stupid, then you're going to have to be willing to say that about Ibn Khuzaimah, Ahmed bin Hanbal. And Ahmed bin Hanbal was the man who defended, right, what became Sunni orthodoxy over against the Mu'tazili.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so he's the one, he defended the idea that the Quran is eternal, which became the later orthodoxy of Muslims. So if he was stupid, well, then, I don't mind, I often tell people, I don't mind if you want to call me stupid. I think that you're actually forgetting a few terms that might just as well be applied to me as well. But, that just gives me the opportunity then to observe that by the force of logic, your own logic, this person's stupid as well as all these other people.
Yeah. And so, for Muslims who want to go that route and attack 14 centuries of Islamic scholarship and your great hadith collectors and the founders of your great schools and your prophet himself, all the luck to you. You go for that. Just don't do it in a Muslim country because they'll kill you for it. All right, what else do we have here? 3, the only two things that Allah mentions in the Quran is hand and face. However, these are metaphorical, not literal. Have a look at Assad's footnote and Yusuf Ali's footnote on 39, 67, 55, and so on. And here I'm guessing the response would be the same. You gave an argument for why Allah's hands would be taken literally. And so we'd have to see that argument refuted, not just repeating over and over again that, it's just figurative, right?
Yeah, but there's another problem with appealing to Muhammad Assad. I mentioned the Mu'tazili. Muhammad Assad was essentially a contemporary Mu'tazilite. And so he not only rejected the notion that the Quran describes Allah having literal face and hands and so forth, he rejected the entire notion that Allah has attributes at all. And so when the person then says in his next point, which you had on the screen, number 4, that Allah is unique and so forth, he's ascribing to Allah an attribute which you can't do according to Muhammad. I mean, Muhammad Assad is inconsistent. He'll say that Allah is unique as well, but if you want to go with Muhammad Assad, you have to say Allah has no attributes at all, including the attribute of seeing, the attribute of hearing, because Allah is absolutely one, and if you say he has attributes, then you're admitting some kind of plurality in your understanding of Allah, which is precluded by the fact that he's absolutely one. Mm-hmm. And what happens then, once you start being consistent with that, is you can't describe Allah at all. Mm-hmm. Right? Not only can't you say he has a shin, you can't say he knows everything, he hears everything, he sees everything in terms of attributes. And so what are you talking about then, right? Mm-hmm. Your God ends up being a blank, mm-hmm. right? A definitionless being.
And so once again, Muslims are free to go this route, but if they're saying, hey, you're stupid if you don't go this route, keep in mind you're excluding basically all the Muslims down through history who weren't regarded as heretics, right? Mm-hmm. So, again, if you want to go that route, then be our guest. And finally, we have in the Quran, God is unique and unlike his creatures, Anthony. So we must not compare him with man. Have a look, because you obviously haven't looked at these before, Anthony. Have a look at 42:11, 112, 1 through 4, and 6, 103. And be sure to read Assad's commentary and Yusuf Ali's footnotes on these passages, so that because the Quran isn't clear enough on its own, you need Muhammad Assad. Yeah, and
yes.
But by the way, little side note, didn't Muhammad Assad believe that there are like fables and stuff in the Quran, that passages that Muslims take as historical are just basically the Quran is just recording fables here?
Yeah, actually, he's a favorite of Shabir Ali, and you know the direction that Shabir Ali has gone in. He looks for any opportunity to interpret supernatural aspects of the text in naturalistic ways. Mm-hmm. So he doesn't always speak very clearly or come down very firmly on some of these things, but he's very quick to point out, well, this could just mean this, and so forth. And he's getting a lot of that from people like Muhammad Assad. Mm-hmm. So Muhammad Assad, where possible, will try and water down things like the virgin birth or things of that nature. And he also will say that certain fables are just being used to teach a moral lesson or something like that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, he did. So with respect, though, to the question, Surah 42:11 and Surah 112:4, and by the way, note the miracle here. Surah 42:11 is 112:4 backwards, right?
Yeah.
You notice that?
It's miraculous.
It's miraculous.
It's a numerical miracle.
Yes, mathematical miracle of the Quran. Well, both of those passages say that there's no one like Allah and there's nothing comparable to him. However, if you look at the context of these passages, it's clear they're not being intended in an absolute sense, meaning that there's no point of contact or correspondence between anything that's true of Allah and anything that's true of anything else. In the context of Surah 42, Allah is saying that he created mates or spouses for everything so that they might multiply or procreate. But when it comes to Allah, he has no mate or spouse. There's no one else like him, right? He doesn't have an Eve. Mm-hmm. When you look at Surah 112:4, the context is saying that Allah doesn't beget, neither is he begotten. Again, it ties in with this notion that Allah doesn't have a counterpart with whom he can procreate. So it's not saying he doesn't have a body. Any more than it would mean Allah doesn't have or Adam doesn't have a body just because he wasn't begotten, right? He wasn't begotten. He was created by Allah. And prior to having children, he didn't beget. Or Allah could have created him without giving him a spouse, and he would have been neither begotten, nor would he beget. That wouldn't prove that Adam doesn't have a body, right? Surah 33:2 of the Quran says the wives of Muhammad are not like other women. That doesn't mean they don't have bodies. It means there's something distinctive about them. And Surah 112:4 and Surah 42:11 both identify clearly what that difference is between Allah and everything else. Now, again, the person brings up Muhammad Assad. If you go look at Muhammad Assad, for example, he mentioned Surah 6:103, right? If you look at Muhammad Assad's interpretation of that verse, I believe that's one where it speaks of Allah being exalted above, and what he's doing is he's referring to the Islamic concept of tanza, which refers to the utter transcendence and otherness of Allah, such that he doesn't belong in any category, right? He can't be categorized. There's nothing that can be said of him that can be said of creatures, and in his commentary, Assad says that Allah can't be defined. Right, he exists above definition. Well, now the problem with all of this is, first of all, he's saying that Allah can't be categorized. Well, that just means that Allah belongs in the category of those things that can't be categorized. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And if they want to say it's a paradox, well, I thought they don't like paradoxes, right? They don't like when we say things that they don't fully grasp or understand. But secondly, he says that Allah can't be defined. That was my whole point. If you say that Allah is absolutely one, and that precludes taking certain passages like face and hands as attributes, then you also have to preclude his other attributes. And that means that Allah is definitionless. And if he's definitionless, then we don't know what in the world you're talking about when you talk about Allah. Right? What does that mean? So Muhammad Assad is not a help here. He creates a worse problem. And
notice that's where he went over and over again. Oh, but Muhammad Assad, who, again, is a modern-day Mu'tazilite, not helping you by going there. So this is someone who is basically throwing out 14 centuries of Islamic scholarship and Islamic sources and Islamic schools and just saying, hey, here's a guy, I found that can help me avoid the obvious implications of our sources, so I'm going to go that route. Well, you can follow Shabir Ali down that road, but you're departing from orthodoxy if you do that. And there are already Muslims calling out Shabir for departing from orthodoxy on a variety of issues. So just be careful there. All right, we're a couple minutes over. I don't mind going a couple minutes over. We're doing kind of Q&A here. I wanted to get through these last few questions on the super chat, and then one person who obviously didn't understand again here, John Smith. Here we go. So, Anthony, you're talking about the man God. Is that the same man God who was having a walk in the Garden of Eden after Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge? You see there, hypocrite, you're being inconsistent and not applying the same reason. Now, how many times have we been over that exact same issue?
Well, it's good here, though, because it allows for us to repeat this again for the people that, like John Smith here, who need it repeated. But also, I think in my last explanation, I didn't bring in an additional element that should be mentioned. We say that first of all, when the Bible describes God, when it's a passage that's actually intended to tell us who he is and what he's like, it tells us things like God is spirit, John 4:24. It tells us that God is omnipresent, Psalm 139, right? Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? It tells us things like that. But the Bible also uses figures of speech, which we're saying is possible when it comes to other sources as well. We have to look at the context of those sources to determine how it's properly understood. But there's also an additional fact in the Bible. The God of the Bible, although he is spirit, is able to condescend and reveal himself to creatures in a visible way. Okay, this is called a theophany in Christian theology, and this is not a concept that is found in Islamic theology. Muslims do not believe in the idea that Allah can condescend and enter into the world and assume a temporary appearance for the sake of communicating to creatures. There's a lot of inconsistency in that claim, but Christians do believe that God can do that. And so it's not a problem for us when you mention God appearing in the garden and talking to Adam and Eve. Obviously, we believe God can do that because we believe in the incarnation, right? Mm-hmm. That Jesus is God incarnate. So all of these Old Testament appearances of God are really a foretaste of the coming incarnation. This is God showing people in advance that he can do this sort of thing. And that's why it's so problematic that Muslims reject what you find in the Old Testament. Remember, Jesus said, if you don't believe Moses and the prophets, then you won't believe what I'm saying, right? So Moses and the prophets were preparatory. They told us who God is, what he's like, what he can do and can't do, and what he would do. And anybody who refuses to listen to that lesson and learn those sorts of things isn't going to be prepared for what we find in the New Testament. And so, I mean, that's not a problem for Christian theology at all.
In other words, once again, if God appeared to Abraham and had two shins, or even if he had appeared with one shin, we wouldn't have a problem with it because we believe God can do that. And so it wouldn't be a problem for us. It wouldn't be an incoherence in our view. It's Muslims who are saying God just doesn't do that sort of thing. You Christians are dumb for believing that God became incarnate in the person of Jesus Christ. You're silly and ridiculous for believing that sort of thing, because how could God have a body? And they don't realize that their sources are filled with claims about Allah having a body. It's a problem for them, right? They've got an internal incoherence in their beliefs. That's just the way it is, Muslims. So the point here is you should be trying to make your beliefs coherent and consistent, right? Now, there are two paths you can go. One, you can say, no, Allah doesn't have any body parts. Muslims who say otherwise are wrong. When Muhammad said that Allah, he's going to show everyone his shin, that can't mean that, or the Prophet never said that, it can't be true. You can just start throwing out sources, and you can start reinterpreting texts, and you can start throwing 14 centuries worth of Muslims under the bus. You can do that. That's one route you can go. Or the simpler route is to just say, okay, according to the Muslim sources, Allah has a body. He has at least one shin. He has 2 feet. He's got a face. Go that route, and then you're consistent. What's inconsistent and incoherent is maintaining that you accept these sources and you accept what your prophet says, and you believe in Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. You believe in these sources. These are your authoritative sources. You believe in the Quran, and you don't believe that Allah can have a body or has any body parts. That's incoherent. You've got to come up with some way of reconciling that. And until you do, we're going to keep coming at you with these issues. All right, let's go rapidly through some super chatters here. Anthony, Sneakers Corner says Allah would need to be in creation to create. So not a big question here, but would Allah need to be in creation to create? And to be not according to the Quran, right? Allah can just say be.
Well, yeah, but what I'm pointing out is the logic of saying Allah has hands and face, and these have, some constraints, right? If Allah's hand fit between Muhammad's shoulder blades, then it has spatial dimensions or existence, and that creates the problem. Even if you want to say Allah is unbelievably large, right? Maybe he's like Aladdin's genie. Remember the scene in Aladdin, the cartoon, Robin Williams, where he says, what does he say? He says, infinite cosmic power, as he blows up. And then he says, in itty bitty living space, right? And he shrinks down into the lamp. So maybe Allah is like one of the jinn, which are considered, tangible beings according to the Quran. Mm-hmm. Eat food, they fart, they do all those good things. And, So maybe Allah is like that, where he can blow up extremely large and shrink down really small, but he's still being described as a corporeal being in some sense that has these features. And if that's the case, then he can't exist apart from time and space, right? Those are, if you're a being of that sort, the very conditions or of possibility for you existing are the categories of space and time, or the realities of them. And so what I'm getting at is, if that's the case, then he can't be the creator of heaven and earth, because he would require heaven and earth to exist for himself to exist, right? Only if Allah is not a corporeal being, but is more like the God of the Bible, right? Infinite, eternal, unchangeable in his being, wisdom, power, and all that. Only if he's like that could he say consistently that he's the creator of heaven and earth, because that kind of being doesn't need heaven and earth in which to exist.
Yeah. From Blickaroni, ask Muslims to explain how the genderless Allah can be Father Yahweh. So how can the genderless Allah be the Father Yahweh?
Well, you're okay. First, I mean, Allah does consistently use masculine pronouns, but yeah, he doesn't have, well, according to most Muslims, he doesn't have a gender. But again, according to the Islamic sources, he does have a anatomy, and that anatomy includes things like loins and the rest of it, the whole package there.
And he would seem to have gender because, well, if the I've never seen a Muslim translate the consort passage as he has no husband. I mean,
right?
How can Allah have a son when she has no husband, right?
Yeah.
So, but it's pretty standard that when he has no wife to understand it that way.
Yeah, yeah. But the Quran is clear that Allah is not a father to anyone, so we don't need to speculate there. It says he's not a father, and it rejects not only the Trinitarian concept of father-son relationship, that is the eternal relationship that obtains between the first and second person of the Trinity. He also rejects the adoptive sonship that believers possess, and he just flat denies that he's a father in any sense. He's the highest relationship anybody has to him is that of master and slave. So yeah, there's no concept of Allah as father, and therefore he can't be the God of the Bible. And that's not just a New Testament fact, right? Muslims often like to say, we believe just what the Jews believe. Well, there's several ironies there, right? Number one, the Jews believe that God is a father. Number two, Old Testament Jews, pre-Christian Jews contemporary with Christ, did not believe that God had a body, right? Although they believed he could temporarily assume a human form and appear to men, but they didn't believe he had a body as part of his divine nature. But the other irony here is, if you look at what Jews believed long after the time of Christ, in particular the Jews of Arabia, you'll find that they believed God had a body, right? And so when somebody, asks where did Muhammad get this idea? Well, he may just as well have gotten it from the post-Christian Talmudic apostate Jews as he could have gotten it from his pagan countrymen. Right. There are a number of hadith that go well beyond any of the hadiths we've read. Right. There are hadiths that start talking about Allah's curly hair. Some talk about his beard, and others his shaven face, and they talk about his green robe, and they just get really descriptive. And a lot of Muslims will reject those hadith out of hand. They're not found in Muslim or Bukhari. They reject them though as Israeliya hadith. That's what they call them, and that means hadiths that are reported by Jews. But these were Jewish converts to Islam, so it's interesting that there's even this stigma attached to Jews who converted to Islam. But they reject those hadiths because they came from Jews. But the Jews were saying that their God had a body at that time.
And just so that there's no misunderstanding here, we wouldn't say that God, apart from the incarnation of Jesus Christ, has a gender in any sort of biological sense, meaning Right, because when we talk about having a biological gender, we're talking about having an XY chromosome or an XX chromosome. When it's talking about your gender, either having a penis or a vagina, having a certain level of testosterone or estrogen, we're not applying any of that to God. We would apply it to Jesus Christ when he became incarnate. But just clarify, what are your views on that?
Yeah,
Gender?
no, I would agree exactly with that.
Okay. Quick comment right here. David, would you like to answer some of the objections raised by Akil or whatever his name was? I don't think I've ever watched any of Akil. I've talked to Akil once. He was kind of I talked to him after the debate. Told him one of my issues. Well, I've just basically never paid any attention to him. That he came across as a stalker when I showed up at a place and they said, "Hey, Akil contacted us and said he's looking for you." And just not a good way to approach someone. Apparently, it's perfectly normal in Islam to go that way. What did you want to add?
Well, yeah, I mean, I know that he presented himself a little better when you met him. However, I've challenged him to debate a number of times, but he only wants to debate you. So I still will think of him as a stalker. But
Yeah.
I'm not trying to change your mind. I just think that he's got something special for you. So
Yeah, and I mean, and that was part of the reason for avoiding him, right? He did come across like a stalker, right? I'm going around like every site I'm on, everywhere he's following me around, both physically in the world and online. And when I see something like that, it's not that it creeps me out. It's that I think, hey, if you're obsessed with me, cool, I'm going to ignore you, and then you're going to become even more obsessed with me, and then you're going to keep watching my videos, right? So it's that sort of thing, right? If you have a stalker personality, then if you ignore that kind of person, you just made a fan for life, a diehard fan. So anyway, I kind of pointed that out to him when we actually met. What was weird is he actually seemed pretty cool when we met. He seemed like a normal guy that I could hang out with and have discussions. With that said, beyond the brief discussion, we talked about Muhammad and Aisha. I don't think they put that discussion up, but we talked about Muhammad and Aisha and stuff for a while and asked some questions there. But as far as things in his videos, no, I don't recall ever watching a video by a kid. I know he makes them because I see titles pop up, about me in searches and stuff like that. But yeah, I haven't watched him, so I don't think I will. Now, with that said, I did agree to debate him. So he asked me to debate him on two topics, one of my choosing and one of his choosing. And so there I would have to address some of the questions that he has. So yeah. And of course, one of the questions I might want to address is why he doesn't want to debate Anthony on these issues, right? I mean, I'm a philosopher. Anthony studies theology. So if you have theological objections, it would make more sense to go with Anthony. Even my studies in Christianity, I normally focus on things I can examine historically, like the resurrection of Jesus or the life of Muhammad, things like that. Now, I'm happy to debate the issues, but if you're really interested in Christian responses, I don't know why, if you've got Anthony Rodgers sitting right here and me sitting right here, you'd say, I want to discuss the theological issues with the guy who studies theology less than the other guy. And unless your goal is to not get to the truth there, right? Because usually if we're dealing with Islamic topics, I want the best Muslim response out there, right? If we're bringing up an issue, I would love to see, hey, what is the best response a Muslim has? And so to say, no, Anthony, I don't want to face you. I don't want to debate you on these issues. I would have to wonder why, right? I mean, Anthony's right here. And Anthony's challenging you. I don't know why. Again, with that said, I'll go ahead and debate Akil on the topics that we come up with. Hope that he faces Anthony on some important topics as well.
Yeah, real quick, since we're talking about debate, Renee asked about my debate with Shabir. So as far as I know, it's supposed to take place in February. Originally, it was planned for, I think it was November or October. And something fell through with the venue. The university decided they didn't want to host the debate. and Shabir insists that if we're going to do a public debate, it has to be in a university. So with that taking place, it was moved to February, but the person who's responsible for organizing it hasn't given me anything firm yet about its location. He was looking in Colorado, which would be cool. I'd be there near John McRae, but we'll see. I'll keep people posted on it.
Hey, Anthony, this is addressed to me, but would work for either one of us. David, have you heard of Yusuf Estes and other famous converts? Why don't you listen to their reasons of conversions and do videos on that subject? Now, Anthony, we have talked about the world-renowned, brilliant Christian theologian who became a Muslim, Yusuf Estes. I mean, obviously you're familiar with his awesome reasons for converting. Why don't you check those out?
One of my first videos on this channel, besides debates of mine that you've posted, was I think it was Islamic Apologists Say the Dumbest Things, and he featured in one of them, and in the video he was saying that Alexander the Great started Christianity in Rome 300 years before Jesus came. So that gives you an idea of the level of brilliance that he has. And it's significant that he claims to have been a former minister. Now, sometimes he doesn't fully explain that. He was actually a music guy at a church. But he likes to claim that he knew a lot about Christianity, and he converted with a full understanding of what Christians believe. Even to the point of being a minister. And then he turns around as a Muslim now saying things outrageous like Alexander the Great started Christianity 300 years before Christ came. Actually, he says Roman Catholicism. So it's not just Christianity in general. It's Roman Catholicism that he started.
And this is kind of huge because that tells you two things. One, it tells you everything you need to know about Yusuf Estes, right? If after supposedly being a devout Christian for years and then being a supposed Muslim expert on religious issues for a long, long time, you're saying things like Alexander the Great started the Catholic Church 3 centuries before Christ. You could never pass your first test in any seminary or any college class thinking like that. In other words, it's so utterly ridiculous that the moment you hear it, you realize, hey, this isn't a guy who has ever seriously studied Christianity one day in his life. This is a guy who makes things up as he goes along and has no concern for reality as long as he's attacking Christianity. So one, you learn a lot about him. Two, you learn a lot about the Muslim community. Because when the Muslim community can lift someone like that up and think that he's their star guy, he's their go-to guy on religious matters. Oh, look, he's a former Christian minister. Oh, he really knows his stuff. And he can make those kinds of blunders and doesn't get called out for it by the Muslim community. Anthony, if I went around saying that Islam started 3 centuries before Muhammad by some weirdo somewhere, you might be wondering, hey, what kind of case is he making? Is he arguing for some pre-Islamic source that this is derived from? But if I'm just blurting out complete nonsense that contradicts all of reality, am I going to have to wait for Muslims to call me out, or are you going to be the first one to call me out?
I'd be the first.
Yeah, I would get contacted immediately by Anthony here, by Sam Shamoun, by Vocab Malone, by everyone. I would wake up the next day and there would be 700 messages in my inbox saying, David, what are you saying? You're making a bunch of silly, ridiculous claims. In Islam, they just don't seem to care. Now, to be clear, there are Muslims who care. It's just the bigger the crowd you get, the less they care. And you could see that in the debate with Muhammad Hijab. Elijah means God with us. No one cares, right? You could point it out to a Muslim. Look, right here, that's not what that word means. They just don't care. Again, there are Muslims who do care, but the crowd, the mob, on the whole, you can say whatever you want to, as long as you're attacking Christianity and saying something positive about Islam, they just don't care, right? They don't care whether it's true or false.
By the way, it's interesting. This question might seem somewhat off topic, but there's something about it that makes it relevant. Yusuf Estes actually believes the Salafi position that Allah has a face and hands and so forth. If you look up a video of him at a conference somewhere with Bilal Phillips, another well-known Salafi Muslim, he's actually asked a direct question about Allah's face, I believe it was. It was one of his body parts. And in the question, it's kind of funny actually when you watch it because Yusuf Estes, I don't know if many people know this, but he does try and give the impression that he's every bit the sheikh as the next guy, and he'll pretend to do the Arabic and all that. But he often, it's funny to me because whenever we try and pronounce, sometimes I try and pronounce Arabic words correctly, but I freely grant I'm not a Muslim. I don't have the accent. I'm not Arab. And, so I make all sorts of mistakes, but, we get called on that as if that's the substance of our argument, right? It doesn't matter, Allah has hands. You don't know Arabic. Your Arabic pronunciation is terrible.
Yeah.
So, but Yusuf Estes, constantly butchers, the Arabic. But anyways, in this particular video where he's on with Bilal Phillips, he's asked this question and he's stumbling his way through it. And you almost get the impression that he's kind of uncomfortable with the fact that this is what Muslims believe. Mm-hmm. But he's sitting next to a very staunch Salafi Muslim like himself who's not shy about these things, right? Mm-hmm. He doesn't come from a Christian background. And so the idea of Allah having body parts doesn't bother him. And anyways, it's just kind of a funny video where he's trying to answer in the affirmative, but sort of is uncomfortable with it and is butchering things as he goes. Mm-hmm. I don't remember what the name of it is, though.
All right, well, we've got about 3 minutes left, so we decided to go 90 minutes on this since we still had a lot of people on, a lot of questions coming. One more here. I love the patience you both show with some people. I am just not that patient. We are pretty patient with some of these guys, right? I mean, answering the questions over and over and over again. And what do you want to wager, Anthony, that the comments to this video, right after we gave the responses to the exact same objections that we've covered in all 3 videos now, that we're going to see the exact same objections raised in the comments section on this video after it's been posted, no matter how many times we raise it. And that's just...
Yeah. One of the comments on the last video, the guy said, I didn't watch the video, but just from the title, I can refute you guys. and he starts giving this argument, and I said, wrong, addressed in the video. Go watch it. But this guy told me that he didn't watch the video. Most people simply comment and make it clear they didn't watch the video by the ignorant statement that they make, right? They think they're refuting something we address. We're still getting questions about Surah 42:11, for example. Yep. But if you listen to the last 10 to 15 minutes of the prior broadcast, we addressed that, right? Mm-hmm. So, I don't think most of them watch the videos. Some of them are just too arrogant and think we already know the refutation before we hear the argument.
Yep. And so they see the title, Allah the Man God, and they say, and they think, oh, you're going to say Allah has body parts. Oh, look at the Old Testament. Oh, you're inconsistent. Oh, you don't get, come on, it's figurative. It's figurative in the Quran. Like we haven't addressed these over and over and over again.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's go ahead and close out with one last comment that will set up the next installment. This is from a Muslim, Abbas Qasim. Anthony and David, you want us to believe that Allah has a body. Can you show me one Orthodox Islamic scholar who said this? Or are you throwing out 1,400 years of Islamic scholarship too? Are we the ones who are throwing out Islamic scholarship by saying that Allah has a body? And that's how we're ending this episode, and that's how we're going to start the next installment. We'll start by bringing this comment up again, and we will go directly to what Muslim scholars have said about Allah's body. So I wanted to thank you for everyone. I know there were some other people in the super chat that I didn't get to. sometimes we're talking and responding to something, and then the super chats get so far buried behind hundreds of other comments that we don't always get to them. But thank you everyone for contributing and being on with us, and we'll be on once again very soon. I think I'll probably go live again tomorrow night, since I'll be up all night. I'll be up all night tonight, but we just did a live stream. Be up all night again tomorrow night, so probably sometime in the middle of the night, like 2 a.m, I'll just jump on and chat about whatever anyone wants to chat about, since I'll be there. And in the meantime, catch you all later. And any final thoughts, Anthony?
Nope. I was just itching to respond to that last comment, but
you got to give people what they want, but you got to keep them coming back for more. So next time we will discuss Islamic scholars on this issue. See everyone then. Tick-tock, time to rock. Good night, or some of you may be heading off to work, depending on where you are. So whatever time of day it is, we'll see you next time.